Would you recognize a hero in a crowd? At Brookfield Fair, a German shepherd's courage sparked a wave of hope, saving children and reminding a fractured town what it means to stand together. Love powerful animal stories? Tap like and subscribe for more unforgettable moments that bring us closer, one story at a time. The late afternoon air at Brookfield County Fair shimmered with the buzz of laughter, the sizzle of fried dough, and the bright clang of carnival rides spinning in the haze of summer heat. Officer Mike Turner walked the gravel midway with a sense of ritual detachment, his uniform crisp but his thoughts clouded by memories he couldn't quite leave behind. At his side strode Zeus, a German shepherd whose amber eyes caught everything, even what Mike missed. Mike had worked this beat for years. The fair was always the same. Kids clutching melting ice cream, teenagers flirting in the shadows by the ring toss, parents feigning patience as lines stretched for corn dogs. But today everything felt jagged, restless. Maybe it was the sharp sunlight bouncing off the metal booths, or the fact that for the first time he'd arrived alone. No quick texts from his son, Tyler. No hope of a family photo at the Ferris wheel. Only Zeus, ever patient, matching his every step. A cluster of children ran by, chasing each other between food stalls, their laughter momentarily drawing a faint smile to Mike's face. He tried to shake the heaviness that clung to him, a mixture of exhaustion and the dull ache from his recent divorce. The memory of his ex-wife's words still echoed. "You're never really here, Mike. Not for us. Not even for yourself." He was about to move past the faded Big Bob's ice cream truck, a fixture at every fair, when Zeus stopped dead. The dog's ears shot up, body tense as a live wire. Mike barely registered the shift before Zeus lunged forward, barking with a raw urgency Mike hadn't heard since their last high-risk call. For an instant, the world narrowed, the noise, the smells, the colors, all fading behind the single, focused pull of Zeus's harness. "Zeus, heel!" Mike called, instinctively tightening his grip, but the dog refused to back down. Zeus's bark cut through the crowd, drawing stares and a ripple of confusion. The vendor inside the ice cream truck, a stout man with sweat trickling down his neck, froze, his eyes darting between the dog and the line of impatient customers. Mike felt his heart jackhammer as Zeus scratched frantically at the side door, whining, then barking with even greater ferocity. "Back up, folks!" Mike shouted, pushing bystanders away. The vendor protested, voice shaky. "What's your dog doing? There's nothing here!" But Mike barely heard him, his training taking over as he yanked open the metal side door. It stuck. Zeus shoved his nose into the gap, teeth bared, claws scrabbling. Mike drew his sidearm and with a surge of adrenaline forced the door the rest of the way open. Inside, in the dim, stuffy compartment between boxes of popsicles and cones, two children huddled, eyes wide with terror, duct tape over their mouths and wrists bound. Their small bodies shook, and the younger, a girl with tear-streaked cheeks, let out a muffled cry. The vendor bolted for the driver's side, but Zeus leaped across the counter, teeth snapping, blocking the escape. Mike pulled out his radio, barking into it for backup. "Officer needs assistance. Child abduction in progress. Brookfield Fair, Northeast Lot." A crowd had gathered, cell phones raised, capturing everything. The barking dog, the stunned vendor, the tearful rescue. Mike tore the tape from the children's faces, voice trembling as he tried to reassure them. "You're safe now. You're safe. Help is coming." Zeus, still bristling, sniffed the air as if searching for more threats, eyes never leaving the panicked vendor. As the first units rolled up, sirens screaming, Mike held the children close, feeling their tiny hands clutch his sleeves with desperate strength. For a moment, all the carnival chaos faded, replaced by a silent connection. A promise he felt he'd failed to keep for his own son, but now, perhaps, could keep for these two. A surge of guilt, sharp and unexpected, knifed through him as he watched the children's faces. Tyler's face flashed in his mind. How long had it been since he'd seen him smile like that? How long since he'd really been a father? The question gnawed at him, even as adrenaline burned in his veins. The vendor was tackled and cuffed, Zeus barking triumphantly. Medics swarmed in, and the children, clutching stuffed animals found in the truck, sobbed for their parents. Around them, dozens of onlookers recorded, their shouts and cheers turning this nightmare into a viral miracle. Mike sank to one knee, letting the flood of relief and dread wash over him. Zeus nudged his shoulder, eyes searching his partner's face as if to ask, "Did we do enough?" Mike stroked the dog's head, murmuring, "Good boy, Zeus. Couldn't have done it without you." He knew that tonight, after the lights dimmed and the crowds went home, the carnival would pack up as if nothing had happened. But for Mike, and for those two children, nothing would ever be the same. And somewhere in the restless shadows he knew this was only the beginning. The real hunt, the deeper secrets, waited just beyond the bright lights and the laughter. And for the first time in months, Mike felt the flicker of something like hope, tangled with fear, burning in his chest. The chaos at Brookfield County Fair faded into a blur of flashing lights, squawking radios, and reporters clamoring for a quote. Officer Mike Turner stayed crouched beside the rescued children as paramedics examined them, feeling the aftershock set in. His hands trembled, a wave of exhaustion threatening to pull him under. But Zeus sat at his side, gaze unblinking, as if willing Mike to stay grounded, to remember his duty. "Officer Turner," a detective called out, waving a notepad. "The suspect's trying to bolt." In the corner of Mike's vision, the ice cream vendor, hands cuffed behind his back, made a desperate break for the parking lot. Zeus shot forward, leash tight in Mike's hand, muscles coiling with purpose. "Zeus, go," Mike commanded, releasing the harness. Zeus surged after the fleeing suspect, paws kicking up clouds of dust, weaving between startled fairgoers and tipped-over garbage bins. Mike followed, adrenaline pounding through his veins, every instinct screaming for him to catch the man before he disappeared into the maze of food trucks and game booths. For a split second, Mike's mind flickered back to his son, Tyler, running at the park, giggling, a distant memory drowned out by sirens and duty. He shoved the thought away. The suspect darted behind a trailer, thinking he could lose the dog. He didn't know Zeus. With a snarl, Zeus lunged, pinning the man to the asphalt, jaws inches from his shoulder. The vendor whimpered, face pressed to the pavement, and Mike arrived seconds later, breathless. "Stay down! Don't make it worse!" he shouted, slapping cuffs on tighter. Backup officers swept in, taking control as Mike scanned the truck for more evidence. Inside, wedged beneath a panel behind the freezer, they discovered a plastic bag crammed with burner phones, a notepad filled with coded numbers, and a stack of printed manifests. Names, dates, places. Mike's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a single abduction. This was a system. Someone had planned this, mapped it out like a delivery route. A detective whistled, holding up a small device. "Encrypted phone, looks military grade. We'll need digital forensics." Another officer found a roll of cash, receipts from gas stations scattered across state lines. Mike felt a chill. They weren't looking at a lone wolf. This was organized, methodical, and more dangerous than he'd imagined. While detectives processed the scene, Mike knelt by the rescued kids. The boy clung to a worn teddy bear, rocking back and forth, while the girl stared at nothing, her eyes glazed. A social worker offered gentle words, but the children only wanted their parents, sobbing so hard it made Mike's chest ache. For a moment, he saw Tyler's face in theirs, frightened, lost, needing comfort. Guilt twisted inside him. He remembered all the times he'd missed his son's school plays, ball games, the small moments that made a father, a promise he'd once whispered. "I'll always keep you safe, buddy," echoed hollowly now. Was he just fooling himself? Saving these kids didn't erase the distance between him and Tyler. His phone buzzed with a flurry of messages, media requests, congratulations, precinct updates. He tuned them out, focusing on the details. The suspect's phone logs pinged a series of locations on the city map, all clustered around old warehouses and a shuttered photography studio. Detective O'Reilly, an old friend, squatted beside him, flipping through the manifests. "You ever see anything like this, Mike?" Mike shook his head. "Not this slick. They're using delivery routes, probably swapping vehicles, changing drivers. There's more to it. This is just the tip." O'Reilly frowned, thumbing through the evidence bag. "You see this code? It's dates, drop-off points, initials. We're missing something. Whoever's running this, they're hiding in plain sight." Just then Zeus nosed at a duffel bag near the truck's back tire, whimpering softly. Mike unzipped it to find more phones, stacks of fake IDs, and a GPS tracker. He handed it to the digital forensics tech, who plugged it into his laptop, eyes widening as he scrolled through the stored locations. These are all over the county, truck stops, shipping yards, even the state border. A chill ran through Mike. They were looking at a trafficking ring, and the fair was just one stop. "What about the photography studio?" he asked, pointing to the address in the notebook. "It's been closed for years," O'Reilly replied. "But it's got power bills, paid in cash, all to shell companies. Looks like a hub. We'll get the FBI involved, but you and Zeus just cracked something huge." Zeus leaned against Mike's leg, sensing his partner's tension. For a fleeting moment, the chaos of the carnival faded, replaced by the quiet understanding between man and dog. Mike scratched behind Zeus's ears, murmuring, "Good work, boy. You saw what the rest of us missed." Detectives began taping off the area, but Mike couldn't leave yet. He watched the children loaded gently into an ambulance, the girl turning to wave weakly at Zeus. Mike felt a lump rise in his throat. He wondered if anyone had ever come that quickly for Tyler when he was scared. O'Reilly clapped Mike on the back. "You need to go home. Get some rest. We've got this from here." But Mike shook his head, determination settling over him. "No, I started this with Zeus. I'm seeing it through. Whoever set this up, they're still out there." The fair's lights flickered on as dusk fell, laughter and music returning to the midway. But for Mike, a new resolve burned. He couldn't change the past with his son. But maybe, just maybe, he could save someone else's future. As he and Zeus walked away from the chaos, Mike glanced back once at the crowd, parents hugging their children, friends reunited, all unaware of how close darkness had come. He knew the fight was only beginning, and he was ready to follow the evidence wherever it led, no matter the risk. In the gathering twilight, as Zeus padded faithfully at his side, Mike whispered, "We're not done yet, partner. Not by a long shot." Night had fallen heavy and humid by the time Mike Turner returned home, every muscle tight with the tension of the day. The carnival lights still flashed in his mind, blinking red and gold behind his eyelids. But the small ranch house was quiet, shrouded in shadows. Zeus padded in first, nails clicking on the hardwood, then flopped down with a deep, weary sigh, as if the dog himself carried the burden of the case. Mike shrugged off his uniform shirt and sank onto the couch, letting the weight of exhaustion settle in his bones. He'd never felt so tired, not even after the longest shifts on the force. But this was different, a spiritual exhaustion, the kind that seeps in when you start to question whether you've given enough, whether you're fighting a war you can't possibly win. The house echoed with absence. Family photos lined the hallway, reminders of the life that used to fill these rooms with laughter and Saturday morning cartoons. The biggest picture, Tyler at age 8, grinning with his front teeth missing, an arm slung around Zeus's thick neck, was tilted at an odd angle, as if even the memory was slipping away. Mike found himself staring at it far too long. He raked a hand through his hair, trying to shake off the gloom. "You hungry, Zeus?" he asked, his voice rough with fatigue. Zeus thumped his tail, head tilting in that way that always made Mike smile, just a little. He made his way to the kitchen, fed the dog, then poured himself a coffee he didn't really want, anything to avoid the silence. But silence had a way of finding him. As Zeus finished eating, he returned to Mike's side and simply sat, gaze unwavering, presence solid and real. In the old days, Tyler would have rushed in then, begging to feed Zeus treats or wrestle on the living room carpet. But those days were gone. His ex-wife had moved across town, taking Tyler with her, and now it was just Mike and Zeus and the ghosts of what might have been. Mike picked up his phone and thumbed through messages, mostly department chatter about the raid, some congratulations, some questions about the evidence haul. No message from Tyler. He scrolled back through old texts, the last one weeks ago, a single-word answer from his son. "Busy." The pain was sharp and sudden, like a paper cut to the heart. He tried not to dwell, but memories pressed in. Tyler's hand in his, the thrill of teaching him to ride a bike, the laughter on fishing trips. Now, every call from work, every late-night emergency, had put one more brick in the wall between them. Mike didn't blame his son for pulling away. He blamed himself. He pushed the phone aside, letting his head fall into his hands. "What am I doing, Zeus?" he whispered. The big dog crawled closer, resting his chin on Mike's knee, eyes shining with unspoken understanding. It was a comfort, but also a painful reminder. Zeus never judged, never left, never needed apologies. Mike let the silence stretch. just breathing in the warm, doggy smell and the faint scent of gun oil and old coffee that lingered in the air. Then, almost by instinct, his mind drifted back to the case. He replayed every detail: the ice cream truck, the burner phones, the coded notebook. Somewhere in that tangle of clues was a pattern, something he'd missed. He fired up his laptop and pored over the evidence. Zeus sat alert by his feet, ears twitching with every click of the mouse. Mike mapped the GPS points pulled from the suspect's tracker, pinning each truck stop and warehouse along the interstate. The pattern began to emerge. The network was targeting places that rarely drew suspicion, locations where strangers came and went without notice. Truck stops, shipping yards, back alley parking lots. He remembered the look in the rescued girl's eyes, haunted and hollow. How many other kids were still out there, waiting for help that never came? The thought sent a shiver through him. He couldn't let it go. He wouldn't. A deep ache settled in his chest. He should be sleeping, resting up for the next shift, but instead he sat in the blue glow of the screen, fingers tapping through files and phone logs. Every time he started to doze off, a nightmare jolted him awake. Tyler's face superimposed on one of the missing children, calling out for him and vanishing into darkness. Eventually he surrendered, closing the laptop and staring out the window at the empty street. Zeus settled at his feet, sighing deeply, offering silent company. "I don't know if I can do this alone, buddy," Mike said softly, voice cracking. "I don't even know if I'm the man I used to be." Zeus shifted closer, nudging his hand until Mike relented and scratched behind his ears. The simple, loyal gesture did what no words could. It pulled Mike back from the brink, reminded him that he wasn't truly alone. He made a silent vow then, watching the stars blur outside the window. He would find whoever was responsible. He would save those kids. Maybe, if he could do that, he could find his way back to his own son, too. With the first light of dawn creeping over the rooftops, Mike rose, exhaustion still heavy, but a new resolve hardening inside him. He strapped on his holster, ruffled Zeus's fur, and headed out the door. The shadows of the past were long, but Mike was ready to step into the light, no matter how dark the road ahead. The sky was still gray when Mike Turner and Zeus hit the road again, both running on little sleep and raw determination. Brookfield was waking up, mailboxes creaking open, the faint rattle of early delivery trucks, but Mike's mind was far from suburban normalcy. He replayed the map in his head. Truck stops, freight depots, shuttered warehouses, always the kind of places people overlooked. The morning briefing at the station was short and tense. FBI agents now officially led the case, taking over evidence and crowding Mike out with polite indifference. "Good work out there, Turner," one of them said, barely glancing up from her laptop. "We'll take it from here." He recognized the tone, official, detached, cold. It stung more than he wanted to admit. Mike watched as the feds hauled away files and bags of evidence, leaving him to fill out paperwork while they planned the real operation. He tried to focus on the facts, but his mind wandered, back to the fair, to the kids' faces, to Tyler's last text, still unanswered on his phone. Frustration gnawed at him. He'd been a cop for 17 years, had solved cases everyone else gave up on. But suddenly, he was a bystander. Zeus, sensing his partner's unrest, paced the perimeter of Mike's desk, tail low, ears perked for any sign of action. Mike tried to reassure him. "Not our call right now, buddy." But his own words rang hollow. He waited for hours, watching the clock, checking the evidence logs, scanning reports. The feds chased leads, made phone calls, and shared nothing. The ache of uselessness settled deep. When his shift finally ended, he returned home, restlessness pulling at his every move. He tossed his badge on the kitchen counter and led Zeus out into the backyard, watching as the big shepherd did a careful circuit of the fence, sniffing every post, alert for things Mike couldn't see. By sunset, Mike couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his notebook and the copy of GPS data he'd kept for himself. Rules be damned. He owed those kids more than bureaucracy. He owed himself a shot at redemption. "Come on, Zeus," he said, snapping on the leash. "Let's see what the FBI missed." They drove out to the freight depot on the city's edge, a sprawling lot littered with shipping containers and battered 18-wheelers. The place hummed with the noise of forklifts and shouting drivers. But beneath it all, a sense of something hidden, something wrong, lingered in the oily air. Mike parked in the shadows, heart pounding, nerves tight. He knew this was reckless, working off the clock without backup, but he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Zeus leapt from the car, nose to the ground, instantly alert. They moved through the maze of trailers, Mike blending in with a clipboard and a borrowed safety vest. He trailed Zeus past rows of crates and pallets, eyes scanning for anything out of place. They reached a dimly lit loading dock at the back of the lot. It was quiet, too quiet. Zeus's ears shot up, body rigid. Without a sound, he padded toward a stack of empty boxes, sniffing intently. Mike followed, pulse hammering. Suddenly Zeus stopped, pawing at a rusted locker wedged behind the crates. Mike yanked it open and found a duffel bag stuffed with children's clothing. Tiny shoes, a pink backpack, a superhero t-shirt. Next to it, fake IDs, passports with kids' faces and different names. And taped to the inside of the locker door, a narrow slip of paper, a coded list of dates, initials, and addresses. The sight chilled Mike to the core. He glanced at Zeus, who sat quietly now, head cocked, as if asking, "What now?" Mike felt a surge of gratitude for the dog's unerring instincts. "You're the best partner I've ever had," he whispered, voice thick. He sat on the edge of the loading dock, the duffel bag at his feet, and let the weight of the discovery settle in. He realized, with a clarity that hurt, how much he needed Zeus, not just for the work, but for the simple connection, the trust he'd lost with people. People judged, lied, disappointed. Zeus was just there, always, no matter how ugly the world got. Mike's hands shook as he scribbled the coded notes into his pad. He stared at the list, trying to crack the logic. It dawned on him that every name, every date, was another tragedy waiting to happen. Each code represented a child who might vanish before anyone noticed. He couldn't let that happen. Suddenly, headlights swept over the dock. Mike tensed, watching a pickup truck rumble past, but it was just a tired driver on his way out. Still, the adrenaline lingered, his nerves frayed raw. As dusk deepened, Mike and Zeus left the depot, their evidence stashed safe. He called it in anonymously, refusing to give the feds a chance to brush off his findings. He sent copies of the coded list to O'Reilly, along with the message, "Border handoff tonight. You need to move." Sitting in his car, Mike let his head fall back against the seat, letting himself feel everything. The anger at being sidelined, the fear of what they were up against, the fierce gratitude for Zeus. He thought about Tyler again, about the gulf between them, and wondered if it could ever be bridged. But for now, all that mattered was the next step, the next rescue. He looked at Zeus, who stared back with unwavering loyalty. "We're not done yet, partner," Mike said quietly. "Let's finish this. For them. And for us." As night fell over Brookfield, Mike started the engine, ready to chase the darkness to its edge, knowing that whatever came next, he and Zeus would face it together. The clock on the dashboard glowed a harsh 8:47 p.m. as Mike Turner steered his cruiser along the old state highway, Zeus's head out the back window, nose twitching at the humid night air. Mike's mind ran in circles, details, code lists, the desperate call he'd placed to O'Reilly. He shouldn't be here. He'd been told to stand down, to let the FBI experts run the show. But Mike knew this was more than a case. It was a promise to himself, to the missing kids, and to a part of him he thought was gone. The border handoff, the coded list. Too many signs pointed to tonight. He'd texted O'Reilly the coordinates pulled from the freight depot evidence. O'Reilly hadn't answered. Mike suspected the message had gotten lost in the shuffle, or maybe ignored altogether. Either way, he wasn't waiting for permission. He'd spent too many years watching the system move too slow, letting the worst people slip away. At the next intersection, a rookie patrol car idled, red and blue lights muted, engine humming. Rookie Officer Jenna Lee, fresh from the academy, eager, nerves barely hidden, waited for him, clutching her radio like a lifeline. "You sure about this, Turner?" Jenna asked, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror as she slid into the passenger seat of Mike's car. Her voice was taut with adrenaline. "You want to call for backup?" Mike shook his head. "Every minute we wait, they get further ahead. Just you, me, and Zeus." The old highway curved away from town, fields rolling past under a moonlit sky. Mike gripped the wheel, senses sharpened by anxiety and anticipation. Zeus whined softly, alert to his partner's tension. Ahead, a row of taillights flashed through the darkness, gathering at a desolate rest stop near the border, a place truckers used to change shifts where no one asked questions. Mike killed the headlights and coasted the cruiser behind a line of abandoned trailers. He glanced at Jenna. "Stay behind the engine block if shooting starts. Don't play hero." She nodded, swallowing hard, but her eyes burned with resolve. They watched from the shadows. 3 vehicles idled under a single flickering lamp: a beat-up van, a sleek black SUV, and an old delivery truck. Mike watched silhouettes move. 3 men, tense, checking phones, speaking in clipped, hurried tones. Every few minutes someone glanced at their watches. Mike's gut told him this was it. The drop. A flash of movement. A 4th vehicle rolled in, headlights off, doors opening quietly. 2 figures emerged, one with a child-sized bundle under his arm. Mike felt the air leave his lungs. He motioned to Jenna. "On my signal. Zeus, heel." Time warped. Seconds stretched. Adrenaline sharp enough to taste. Mike's mind whirled. His hand hovered over his holster. He thought of Tyler. He thought of the kids waiting in the dark. He thought of Zeus, ever steady, pressed close to his knee. He made his move. "Police!" Mike shouted, stepping into the yellow pool of light, badge and weapon raised. "Get your hands where I can see them! Don't move!" Chaos exploded in an instant. The men scattered. The man with the child bundle tried to bolt, but Zeus shot forward, propelled by years of training and raw instinct. He tackled the courier, pinning him hard to the ground, barking with authority. Jenna ducked behind the car, radioing for backup as Mike moved to secure the area. One suspect dove for the van. Mike fired a warning shot. The van screeched away, tires smoking. Mike lunged after the SUV, shattering the rear window with his baton as it sped past. For a moment, all he could hear was Zeus barking, metal crunching, feet pounding over gravel. In the melee, Mike wrenched open the back of the delivery truck and found 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl, all pale and shaking. He ripped duct tape from their wrists, checking for injuries, voice trembling with urgency. "You're safe now, you hear me? We've got you." The girl clung to his neck, sobbing, while the boys stared wide-eyed at Zeus, awe and terror mingling on their faces. The scene was chaos. Jenna handcuffing a man who'd tried to run, Zeus holding another at bay, sirens wailing as distant backup finally arrived. Mike could feel the adrenaline burning through him, but beneath it all a strange clarity settled. Every second mattered. Every decision counted. A battered courier, face bloodied, hissed at Mike as he was led away. "You'll never get the boss. You don't even know who you're dealing with." Mike pressed him for answers, but the man clammed up, offering only a slip of paper folded in his pocket. A set of coded notes, more names, more locations. Scrawled at the bottom was a cryptic title: The Broker. The Broker. The name landed heavy in Mike's mind, like a shadow looming over everything. He handed the paper to Jenna, watching her eyes widen as she read. "What is this, some kind of criminal mastermind?" she asked, voice trembling. "Looks like we just found their middleman," Mike replied grimly. "Someone big, someone careful. And they're using our own roads, our own routes. This doesn't stop here." Zeus pressed against Mike's side, sensing his partner's surge of energy, anger, hope, fear all tangled together. Mike knelt, stroking Zeus's head. "Couldn't have done it without you, buddy. You're a hero, you know that?" As the rescued children were loaded into ambulances and the captured courier stared daggers at the officers, Mike allowed himself a rare moment of pride. Every beat of his heart, every sharp inhale, felt like a step closer to something he hadn't known he'd lost: redemption. But the broker's shadow lingered. The coded manifests, the patterns in the logistics, the layers of secrecy. It all pointed to an operation far bigger than he'd imagined, embedded deep in the community, invisible until now. Jenna punched his shoulder, grinning shakily. "You really think we made a dent tonight?" Mike allowed himself a half smile. "Tonight, we saved 3 kids. That's a dent. But we're not done. The broker's still out there, and so are we." Zeus barked once, clear and loud in the humid night. For a heartbeat, hope flickered on the horizon. As the night stretched on and evidence was bagged, Mike glanced at the sky, searching for the dawn, knowing that, for now, he could breathe. But the fight wasn't over. Not for him, not for Zeus, and not for the children who still waited in the darkness. Morning sunlight sliced through the blinds, striping Mike's living room in harsh gold as he sat hunched over the kitchen table, mug of coffee growing cold in his hands. The previous night's operation replayed in his mind, flashes of chaos, Zeus's bark echoing in his ears, the terrified faces of rescued children. The word broker kept surfacing in his thoughts, a name that felt both ominous and unfinished. For the first time in weeks, the news gave a hint of hope. 3 children rescued in border sting. Hero K9 saves the day, read one headline. But the broker, the mastermind, was still out there. Mike's phone chimed, the vibration rattling the tabletop. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something in his gut told him not to. He swiped to answer, steeling himself. Silence on the other end, just the faint static of a hidden line. Then a low, synthetic voice distorted by software. "Stop digging. You're out of your depth, Turner. Walk away, or you and your dog will end up in the dark." The call ended before Mike could speak. His blood ran cold. He glanced at Zeus, who cocked his head, sensing tension spike in the room. Mike tried to shake off the fear. "We've rattled someone, buddy," he whispered, forcing a smile, but unease curled in his chest like smoke. The broker wasn't just some boogeyman. He had resources, reach, and now a grudge. Mike spent the next few hours combing through the coded manifests from the sting. Every detail pointed to an invisible hand orchestrating the trafficking network, always one step ahead. The pattern was becoming clearer. Routes mapped over logistics companies, contacts embedded in local businesses, a web of shell corporations hiding the movement of kids across state lines. It was bigger than he'd feared. He was halfway through matching dates and locations when his laptop suddenly flickered, screens going black, then spitting lines of code. A blinking red warning filled the display. Police records compromised. Back off. Files started vanishing. Mike yanked the power cord, heart pounding. He tried to call the station, but the line was dead. Within minutes, the landline rang. A different voice, sharper, younger, taunted. "You're not safe, Turner. Check your front yard." The line cut out. Mike's breath hitched. He rushed to the window, heart thudding. On his front lawn, planted in the grass, was a child's toy, one of the pink backpacks from the freight depot, the name Jenny written in black marker. His pulse spiked. Someone had been here. He scanned the street, every shadow a threat, every car a potential lookout. He locked every door, checked every window, then turned his attention to Zeus. "You stay close," he ordered, voice tight. Zeus bristled, ears pinned back as if he could sense the danger in the air. The police arrived within 10 minutes, but the menacing messages had left no digital trail. The FBI advised Mike to lay low. But Mike refused. He doubled down, sending every shred of evidence to O'Reilly and asking her to watch his back. She promised to have extra patrols pass by his place. Still, Mike knew he couldn't rely on anyone but himself and Zeus. That night, he barely slept. Every creak of the house set his nerves on edge. Zeus dozed at his feet, always alert, never quite resting. By midnight, Mike's exhaustion won, and he drifted into a fitful sleep on the couch. A sharp whimper from Zeus jerked him awake at 3 a.m. The dog staggered from the kitchen, sides heaving, tongue lolling. Mike shot to his feet, panic slicing through the haze. He found a piece of beef jerky on the floor, one he hadn't given. Poison. He swept Zeus into his arms, heart racing, and called the emergency vet. The minutes crawled by in a blur of flashing lights and frantic prayers. The vet pumped Zeus's stomach and hooked him up to IV fluids. Mike sat in the sterile waiting room, fists clenched, mind racing with guilt and rage. The vet finally emerged, eyes tired but reassuring. "He's a tough one. He'll pull through. Whatever he ate, he didn't get the full dose." Mike choked out a thank you and stayed at Zeus's side all night, stroking his fur, whispering apologies. "That's on me, partner." Should have seen it coming. His throat burned. Zeus, even weak, nudged Mike's hand, forgiveness in his tired gaze. As dawn broke, Mike's phone buzzed again. This time an anonymous email. The subject line, "Game over." Attached was a screenshot of Mike's home address, Tyler's school schedule, and a photo of Mike's ex-wife's car parked in her driveway. His world shrank to a pinpoint. The broker was coming for his family. Mike called O'Reilly, voice cracking. "They know where I live. They know about Tyler. I need help. I need eyes everywhere. We're on it, Mike. Stay somewhere safe. I'll get a unit on your family. But even as she spoke, Mike knew the threat was too big for protocol. The police database had been breached. The broker had access to everything. He looked down at Zeus, weak but fighting, and made a vow. No matter what it took, he would end this. For his family, for the kids, and for the partner who'd nearly died because of him. That morning, as the sun rose over Brookfield, Mike loaded his weapon, checked his phone for more threats, and planned his next move. The broker wanted war. Mike was ready. He knelt beside Zeus. We're not backing down, buddy. Not now. Not ever. In the dawning light, a battered cop and his faithful dog braced themselves for the next round, knowing that the broker's game had only just begun. Rain battered the windshield in jagged bursts as Mike Turner waited in the darkness, every muscle tight, Zeus silent at his side. The storm had swept in quick, masking the streets of Brookfield in wavering shadows and blurred halos from streetlights. It was the perfect cover for what they had to do. Tonight wasn't about procedure. It was about survival, about finishing what had begun at the fair and ending the nightmare that had swallowed too many families, including his own. The warehouse by the river looked abandoned, but Mike recognized the careful choreography. 2 cars idling by the loading bay, figures moving quickly from van to door, never lingering under the lights. He checked his phone again. O'Reilly's last text was burned into his mind. Go now. Kid says the children are there. Raid team en route. The child rescued from the convoy had whispered the address through tears. It was all they had. Mike wiped sweat and rain from his brow. He pulled his vest tight, checked his weapon, then glanced at Zeus, who held his gaze unwavering. Ready, partner? Zeus's tail twitched, a silent answer. The two slipped from the car, hugging the fence line, every sense on high alert. Lightning forked above as they reached the loading dock. Mike peered through a crack in the metal siding. Inside the warehouse was a flurry of activity, dozens of boxes stacked high, a handful of armed guards pacing the aisles, and in the corner, huddled children, some crying, some just staring into space. It was worse than he'd imagined. He felt the rage coil in his gut, sharp and electric. He signaled Zeus to stay low, then radioed O'Reilly. In position. Too many guards to wait. Going in. He didn't wait for her reply. With the storm howling, he kicked in the service door, weapon raised. Police, get on the ground. The word shattered the tension like a gunshot. Guards spun, shouts and curses filling the air. Gunfire crackled, deafening in the metal space. Mike dove behind a crate as bullets ripped splinters from the wood. He heard Zeus bark, fierce and wild, saw the blur of fur as the dog launched himself at the nearest guard, knocking him flat. Mike rolled up, squeezing off shots. 1, 2, a third into the ceiling for cover. A guard fired back, the bullet whining past Mike's ear. He answered with a shot that took the man's shoulder, sending him spinning. Screams rose from the corner, the children, terrified, scrambling for cover. Stay down, Mike yelled, shoving crates aside, trying to reach them. More guards rushed from an office, faces twisted with panic and fury. In the chaos, Zeus darted ahead, teeth bared, tackling a man trying to drag a child toward the exit. A gun clattered across the concrete. Mike closed the distance in 3 strides, knocking the guard out cold with a savage elbow. He scooped the girl into his arms. It's okay. We're here to help. She sobbed, clinging to his neck, shaking so hard he thought she might break. The alarms blared, red lights flashing. Backup would be there soon, but time stretched thin. Mike swept the children behind an overturned cart. Don't move. I'll be right back. He turned to see Zeus standing over a guard, holding him at bay, chest heaving with exertion. Suddenly, a figure slipped from the shadows. A tall man in a rain-soaked trench coat, mask pulled over his face. He dashed for the office, slamming the door behind him. Mike knew at once, the broker. Zeus, Mike barked. The shepherd wheeled, eyes blazing. Together, they tore through the warehouse, gun drawn, ignoring the stinging pain in his shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. He reached the office, kicked the door in. The broker stood behind a desk, pistol drawn, eyes cold and measured. You don't know what you're doing, officer. Walk away, and no one else has to get hurt. His voice was low, steady, the same tone Mike had heard on the phone. Mike didn't flinch. "You're finished. It's over," the broker sneered. "You think you're a hero? You're just another pawn. There'll be another after me. Always is." Mike edged closer, keeping the broker's attention. Zeus circled, then lunged, fast, teeth flashing. The broker fired, but Zeus was faster, knocking the gun aside. Mike tackled the broker, wrestling him to the ground. The fight was savage, elbows, knees, snarls, and curses. For a moment, Mike thought the broker would break free, but Zeus latched onto his arm, pinning him. Police sirens wailed outside. O'Reilly burst in with the raid team, weapons up. "Clear!" she shouted as officers flooded the warehouse. Mike sat on the broker's chest, panting, rain and sweat running down his face. The broker spat at him, hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't the end." "It is for you," Mike said, voice flat. Within minutes, the warehouse was secured. The children were let out, wrapped in blankets, while paramedics tended to minor wounds. O'Reilly clapped Mike on the back, eyes wide with relief. "You did it. We did it. Hell, you and Zeus just broke the case of the decade." Zeus sat at Mike's feet, panting, chest rising and falling. Mike ruffled the dog's fur, pride and gratitude knotting in his throat. "Couldn't have done it without you, partner." Outside, the rain had slowed, the sky cracking open to a sliver of dawn. As Mike watched the broker loaded into a cruiser, the weight of the chase finally settled. He knelt beside Zeus, resting his forehead against the dog's. "We made it, buddy," he whispered. "We made it." But as the sun broke over the river, Mike knew their work wasn't truly over. The network was broken, but the scars, on the children, on himself, on his family, would linger. Tonight, though, he allowed himself a breath of victory. For the first time in months, hope tasted real. Brookfield was different in the days that followed the raid. Police tape fluttered at the Riverside warehouse, local news vans lined the block, and the entire county seemed to hold its breath. Headlines blared the victory: trafficking ring smashed, children rescued in coordinated raids, K9 hero Zeus honored by city. Yet beneath the surface, an uneasy silence lingered, the aftermath of violence and fear. For Mike Turner, the days blurred together in a haze of interviews, paperwork, and raw exhaustion. He watched from the sidelines as FBI teams swept across the state, armed with the broker's records and coded manifests. Every hour brought news of another raid: motel busts in the suburbs, midnight stings at shipping yards, convoys intercepted on rural highways. Each operation freed more children, broken and bewildered, but alive. It was the sort of victory Mike had only dreamed of, the kind that didn't just make headlines but truly changed lives. And yet, with every success, Mike felt a strange ache, relief mingled with uncertainty. There were always more questions. How many kids had they missed? How many predators had slipped through the net? Could a broken system ever truly keep these horrors at bay? He pushed those questions aside, focusing on what he could control, showing up, telling the truth, and honoring the team who'd made the difference. Zeus became a fixture at City Hall, the hero dog everyone wanted to meet. At a packed ceremony, the mayor presented him with a medal shaped like a dog bone, his name inscribed beneath a tiny badge. The crowd erupted in applause as Zeus sat quietly beside Mike, accepting pats and hugs from strangers, never flinching, always dignified. Mike stood back, eyes stinging as he watched children, some rescued just days before, line up to stroke Zeus's fur, their laughter ringing through the marble rotunda. Reporters crowded close, jostling for quotes. "Officer Turner, what does this mean for you? For Brookfield? For your family?" Mike deflected the questions, his thoughts drifting to Tyler, to the gulf between them that seemed at once smaller and wider than ever. He scanned the crowd for his son, unsure if he'd show up, torn between hope and dread. The day ended with the sun slanting low, painting the courthouse steps in gold. Mike lingered as the crowd dispersed, Zeus at his side, the weight of the medal oddly comforting. O'Reilly found him there, a quiet grin breaking through her fatigue. "You look like hell," she teased, offering him a coffee. "But a hero, I'll give you that." Mike managed a weak laugh. "I don't feel like one. I just kept chasing leads. Zeus did most of the work." O'Reilly nudged his arm. "You never give yourself credit. You saved those kids, Mike. Maybe it's time to let yourself breathe. He shook his head, eyes dropping. You ever wonder if we did enough? If the ones we didn't find will ever come home? Her smile faded, replaced by a sober truth. We did what we could. We broke the chain. Sometimes that's the most anyone can do. Later that evening, alone in his quiet house, Mike felt the old ache return. He let Zeus roam the backyard, tail wagging in the summer dusk, while he scrolled through his phone, press releases, congratulatory emails, photos from the ceremony. One message caught his eye, set apart from the rest. The sender was just a number, but the words sent a jolt through Mike's chest. Saw you and Zeus on the news. Proud of you, Dad. Can we talk? His hands shook. It was from Tyler. He called immediately, barely breathing as the phone rang. Tyler's voice was hesitant, deeper than he remembered, but unmistakably his son's. Hey, Dad, I saw everything. I just wanted to say, I get it. Why you do what you do. I'd like to see you, if you want. A lump rose in Mike's throat. I want that, Ty. More than anything. They made plans to meet the following weekend. When Mike hung up, he stared out at Zeus, who sat beneath the porch light, watching fireflies with solemn patience. Mike joined him, sinking into the grass, feeling the night's coolness settle around them. For the first time in years, peace felt possible. Not a perfect ending, scars remained and nightmares would come, but a new beginning. The children they'd rescued would need help, support, kindness. So would the families shattered by fear and uncertainty. But Mike believed for the first time in a long time that hope was worth the fight. As darkness closed in, he rested his hand on Zeus's back. You did good, partner. We did good. Zeus licked his hand, then stretched out with a long, contented sigh. Days later, Brookfield buzzed with cautious optimism. Police led school assemblies, teaching vigilance and compassion. Social workers checked on survivors, therapists opened their doors, and neighbors looked out for one another in a way Mike hadn't seen since he was a kid. There was a sense that the community had been tested, and though it bore the scars, it had not broken. Mike spent his free time volunteering at the hospital, bringing Zeus to visit the children. Some flinched away at first, haunted by memories too fresh to name. But Zeus was patient, lying quietly until tiny hands reached out to stroke his fur, laughter and trust slowly returning. Mike watched these moments unfold, learning as much from the kids as they did from him, about resilience, about grace, about starting over. At home, he left the TV off, finding comfort in the quiet and the steady presence of Zeus. He didn't know what the future would bring. The broker would face trial, the headlines would fade, and eventually the world would move on. But for the families in Brookfield, for Mike and his son, for Zeus, the story had changed forever. One evening, a neighbor approached as Mike watered the lawn. Thank you, Officer Turner. My kids sleep with the windows open again. That means more than you'll ever know. Mike nodded, humbled, hope growing quietly inside him. Redemption wasn't a moment, but a journey. One he and Zeus had only just begun. Hospitals had a peculiar quiet at night, the kind that settled into your bones. The halls glowed with gentle yellow light, polished floors reflecting ghostly shapes as Mike Turner walked slowly, Zeus padding beside him. It was the first time he'd returned since the raids, this time not as a cop on a mission, but as someone trying to understand the aftermath, and maybe, in his own way, to heal. Children's voices echoed faintly from the playroom, laughter chasing away the memories of locked doors and fear. Mike paused by the window, watching as nurses coaxed a little girl into picking out a stuffed animal. For a moment, he saw Tyler at that age, soft hair sticking up in the morning, gap-toothed smile, and felt his heart twist. So much had changed. But as Zeus entered, something shifted in the room. Kids who had flinched from the touch of strangers now reached out tentatively for Zeus. One boy, sullen and withdrawn, pressed a trembling hand to Zeus's head, then broke into a shy grin as the dog wagged his tail. Mike felt a surge of gratitude. Zeus's presence was a balm, his instincts unerring in places words couldn't reach. Sitting in a corner, Mike found himself quietly watching the children, his thoughts drifting. Each had survived something terrible. Their scars, some visible, some buried deep, would take time to heal, but their resilience awed him. They laughed, played, fought over who got to throw Zeus's squeaky ball first. For a few minutes at least they could just be kids again. He wondered if his own heart could mend in the same way. The guilt he carried, for missed birthdays, for time spent chasing monsters instead of being a dad, didn't vanish overnight. Sometimes the darkness inside felt just as thick as the night he'd walked into the warehouse, weapon drawn, not knowing if he'd walk out again. Yet there were lessons here, in this strange place between trauma and hope. Mike began to see them unfold, quietly and persistently, as if the universe was whispering reminders he'd missed during years of relentless pursuit. First, there was trust and instinct. If he'd learned anything from Zeus, it was that sometimes the best protection came from following a hunch, noticing the overlooked, the bark in a crowd, the unease that something wasn't right. Zeus had taught him to listen, not just to noise, but to silence, not just to what was said, but what was left unsaid. Instinct wasn't perfect, but it had saved lives, including his own. Second, resilience. These children, battered by things they couldn't control, refused to be defined by what had happened to them. They stood up, fell down, got up again. In small ways every day they fought back against the darkness, not with rage or vengeance, but with hope. Mike saw that true heroism wasn't always dramatic or loud. Sometimes it was persistence, refusing to let the past win, chasing every lead, never giving up. Third, vigilance. Evil could hide in plain sight, beneath the mask of normalcy. The broker had been a respected manager, an everyday face in the crowd. It reminded Mike, and everyone in Brookfield, that you couldn't assume safety just because things looked familiar. Community meant watching out for one another, noticing when things didn't add up, and refusing to look away. Fourth, healing. The work didn't end with the arrests. The trauma lingered in the small, everyday moments, the way a child shrank from loud noises, the haunted look in a parent's eyes. Healing, Mike realized, was slow. It took patience and gentleness, the willingness to show up day after day, to offer comfort even when you couldn't fix what was broken. For the kids, for their families, for himself, it was about making space for grief, and then, eventually, for joy. Finally, redemption. Mike had spent years thinking he needed to be perfect to make up for his mistakes. But watching Zeus with the children, how the dog just showed up, unbothered by guilt or fear, he understood something deeper. Redemption didn't come from grand gestures but from presence, from showing up, being there, trying again. Tyler's text had cracked something open in Mike, a door he'd thought was locked for good. The chance to repair, to reconnect, wasn't about erasing the past, but about building something new. Mike visited the hospital every week now, sometimes with O'Reilly, always with Zeus. He listened more, talked less, and learned from the children as much as he taught. When one little boy handed him a drawing, stick figures, a big brown dog, and a man with a badge, Mike blinked away tears. "You saved me," the boy said quietly. "You and Zeus." "No, buddy," Mike replied, ruffling his hair. "You saved yourself. We just helped you find the way." The days stretched into weeks. News crews packed up, politicians claimed credit, and the world moved on. But in Brookfield, the effects lingered. Families rebuilt, children found new routines, neighbors learned each other's names again. The lessons of vigilance and compassion rippled out. Teachers called home more often, parents looked after each other's kids, and for the first time in a long while, Mike felt the town beginning to heal. Late one evening, Mike sat on the porch, Zeus at his feet, the hum of cicadas thick in the air. Tyler's car pulled up, headlights slicing the dusk. Mike stood, nerves jangling as his son climbed out, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. They sat together on the steps, silent, stretching, both unsure how to begin. Then Tyler spoke. "I used to think you cared more about work than me. But I get it now. You never stopped caring. You just didn't know how to show it." Mike's voice was raw. "I'm sorry, Ty, for all of it." Tyler shrugged, a shy smile ghosting his lips. "We're both here now. That's what matters." Zeus nuzzled between them, breaking the tension, earning a laugh from Tyler that was warm and real. For Mike, it was the sound of grace, a chance, finally, to start again. As night deepened, Mike understood the most important lesson. It wasn't about winning every battle or erasing every scar. It was about showing up, loving fiercely, refusing to let darkness have the last word. Because even in the deepest shadows there was light, if you had the courage to look for it and the faith to believe it could return. Months passed, the hard edge of summer giving way to the gentler light of early autumn. The fields around Brookfield turned golden, the air carrying the faintest chill, promising change. Mike Turner noticed the difference most on mornings when the sun caught the dew on his front lawn. Zeus galloping through the grass with a puppy's joy, tail slicing the fog. There was still darkness in the world, still scars that throbbed in the quiet, but life, surprisingly stubbornly, kept offering chances for something new. The annual Brookfield County Fair returned, as if in defiance of all the shadows that had haunted it. Tents blossomed along the same dusty tracks, carousel music floated in the air, and children's laughter wove through it all. For Mike, the fair was no longer a place of ghosts, but of gratitude. This year he wasn't patrolling for trouble, but arriving as a guest, a father, and, thanks to Zeus, a minor local celebrity. He parked his old truck beside Tyler's, heart pounding as he saw his son already waiting at the gate, hands jammed in his pockets, nervous but smiling. They'd spent weekends together since the hospital, taking things slow. Pizza nights, hiking with Zeus, long talks about everything and nothing. The distance between them had shrunk, not all at once, but through small moments, awkward honesty, and a shared willingness to begin again. "Ready for this?" Tyler asked, bumping Mike's shoulder as they joined the throng of fairgoers. Mike nodded, swallowing emotion. "With you here, wouldn't miss it." They didn't talk about the old pain or the chaos that had once defined these grounds. Instead, they wandered the stalls, ate too many hot dogs, and cheered as Zeus was called on stage for the town's first ever hero parade. Kids ran to pet the big shepherd, parents offering heartfelt thanks, their voices trembling with emotion. Mike let himself be hugged, clapped on the back, and for once he didn't shrink from the attention. This was a celebration not just of survival, but of what it meant to come together, to watch over one another, to believe in second chances. When the parade ended, Mike stood at the edge of the crowd, soaking in the sight, families whole again, children chasing each other in the fading light. The community changed but stronger for what it had endured. Zeus sat at his side, tongue lolling, eyes bright as the kids formed a queue for photos and hugs. One little girl, Jenny, whose name Mike still saw in dreams, ran up and pressed a flower into Zeus's collar. "You saved me," she whispered. "You and your friend." Mike knelt, tears prickling his eyes. "You're the bravest girl I know, Jenny, and Zeus is lucky to have you as a friend." Jenny grinned, ran off, and Mike stood, heart light and full. O'Reilly found him later, a funnel cake in each hand. "Hero of the hour, huh?" she teased, smearing powdered sugar on his shirt. He rolled his eyes. "Zeus is the real hero. I just kept up." She nudged him gently. "You stuck around. You showed up." That's all most people ever need. The day faded into evening, twilight painting the sky in streaks of lavender and rose. Mike watched the carousel spin, watched Tyler laugh with other kids his age, watched Zeus roll in the grass with a gaggle of children and parents circling in easy camaraderie. There was no more fear, only the shared relief of having come through something hard and finding, somehow, that joy could still grow. He reflected on what it all meant, not just for himself and Tyler, but for Brookfield, for the kids who'd found safety, for the parents who'd learned to look out for more than just their own. The story wasn't about one rescue, one hero, or even one victory over evil. It was about community. 1,000 small acts of courage and kindness, people deciding every day not to look away, to listen to their instincts, to trust and care for each other. Mike saw now that real courage was a shared journey, not just a single dramatic moment. It was every time someone spoke up when something felt wrong, every time a neighbor lent a hand, every time a parent paid attention even when the world seemed safe. Redemption, he realized, was possible for anyone, not just for the broken or lost, but for everyone willing to show up, to keep caring, to build bridges even after years of silence. Later, as the fair wound down and the crowd thinned, Mike sat on the grass beneath the twinkling lights, Tyler beside him and Zeus sprawled across their feet. The stars blinked above, cool and constant, as if blessing the new beginnings unfolding quietly below. "Think you'll come next year?" Mike asked, voice light. Tyler grinned, nudging Zeus. "Only if he does." Mike laughed, the sound genuine and easy, years of weight lifting off his chest. "Deal. Family tradition now." As they watched the last carousel ride, Mike let the meaning of it all settle inside him. Safety was everyone's responsibility, and every act, large or small, mattered. Healing would take time, but they were on the path together. No one could erase the past, but they could shape what came next. Because they listened, because they acted, the world was a little safer, and a family, once broken, was whole again. He looked at Zeus, eyes shining in the fairground lights, and felt the quiet certainty of love, trust, and hope rekindled. Whatever came, they would face it together, father, son, and loyal dog, a testament to the simple, stubborn courage of refusing to give up. And as the night settled over Brookfield, Mike knew this wasn't an ending. It was the start of something better. For his family, for the children they'd saved, for everyone who'd ever doubted the power of second chances. The darkness had been real, but so was the light, and this time the light had won.